Does your business accountant have to be a CPA? That's the question we're answering on today's episode of The Profit Pillar Show. I'm your host, Parker Stevenson, CEO of the accounting firm for online and modern small businesses called Evolve Finance, and I'm also the author of the book Profit Pillars. Now, there are certain brands that get so big that their company name becomes synonymous with the product that they sell. For instance, at least in the United States, very rarely is someone going, "Can you get me a facial tissue?" I can't remember the last time I've said that. I say Kleenex, even if we don't have Kleenex brand tissues in our house. I'll be like, "Hey, can you hand me a Kleenex?" Or a Coke. "Hey, can you grab me a Coke?" There might only be Pepsi in the fridge, but no one says cola, or very few people say cola. They go, "Hey, can you grab me a Coke?" No matter what the brand is. It's very similar with CPAs. A lot of business owners assume that all accountants are CPAs, or if you're a CPA, then you must know how to do a really good job at filing my business's taxes. And that's not necessarily true. But let me start here. Becoming a CPA is not easy. It takes a lot of work, a lot of studying, and you have to pass some pretty hard tests. It's difficult. And that's why the CPA designation has so much respect around it. If someone says they're a CPA, it's kind of like saying if they're an attorney or a doctor, you're like, okay, you're smart. Doesn't mean they're a good doctor or a good attorney, but it does mean they had to work pretty hard to pass all their tests and get their qualifications. But what a lot of business owners don't understand is that CPAs have to learn a lot about all aspects of accounting. And not all aspects of accounting have to do with taxes, which is why for so many years at Evolve Finance, when we worked with our clients' accountants, and many of them were CPAs, they didn't like their accountants because their accountants weren't that good at delivering a tax service. Despite having CPA designation, the amount of clients that would ask us, "Hey, do you know a good accountant? Because my CPA is not cutting it." And there's a whole lot of reasons why they'd be frustrated with their CPA, but just because someone's a CPA doesn't mean they're good at filing taxes or running a tax business. Now, when you study to be a CPA, you have to learn about auditing, forecasting, and budgeting. You have to learn about just all aspects of business accounting. And usually there's an emphasis there on corporate accounting. And there are a number of CPAs who are on executive teams for Fortune 500 companies, because having a CPA on your executive team, whether they're your CFO, COO, or even sometimes the CEO, is really helpful. It means they have probably a pretty good idea of how to analyze the numbers in a business and make strategic decisions based on those numbers. So CPAs can specialize in a variety of different aspects of accounting, but it doesn't mean they're the best at filing tax returns. So I think that's a really important thing to understand, because so much of filing tax returns and delivering a great tax service has to do with reps and experience, but also just thoughtfulness of how do they want to build out their tax service and what kind of customer experience do they want to give their clients. So there are some other designations that accountants can take on that completely qualifies them to do an excellent job of filing your taxes. So I want to go over a couple of those with you because I do think that a lot of the times, even as business owners, you might be working with one of these people and are assuming they're a CPA and they're not. And that's okay. As long as they're not lying to you and saying they're a CPA when they actually aren't. That's not cool. But for instance, a lot of business owners don't know that there's something called an EA. It means an enrolled agent. This is a certification or a designation given by the IRS. And the people who become EAs, they don't have to do as much schooling as a CPA because they don't have to learn all the extra stuff CPAs have to learn about accounting. Enrolled agents still have to pass a 3-part test that is completely focused on tax returns and tax preparation. And for most business owners, that's what you need. You need someone who You don't really care if they have audit experience. You probably don't care if they have financial planning experience. You want them to file your taxes properly and on time and save you as much money on taxes as possible. At least for most online businesses and modern small businesses, that's what you need them to be the best at. And enrolled agents, that's their focus. My business partner, Corey, he is an enrolled agent. He's also a certified tax planner. So there are other designations really specific to the tax filing and tax preparation and tax planning part of supporting small businesses. So enrolled agents can be awesome options outside of CPAs. And a lot of accounting firms have enrolled agents there. The ones that aren't CPAs probably are enrolled agents. Now, you can also work with a tax attorney. Typically, tax attorneys are not going to be filing taxes a lot. That's probably not where they want the core of their business to be. Maybe they have other accountants on their team that file taxes for them. But most tax attorneys are making their money by doing consulting and advisory work for people with a lot of money or businesses making a lot of money, because they're going to be the ones that maybe get into some tax trouble that demands someone who could represent them in court or do some really heavy tax law research. And that's where tax attorneys are going to make most of their money. They're going to make more money doing that if they can find the opportunities than filing tax returns, unless that's just their passion. But there are tax attorneys that can file your taxes, but having your accountant be a tax attorney is probably a little bit overkill unless you just have a ton of money, and having someone with that level of expertise really is saving you a lot of money in taxes or protecting your business from a legal standpoint, a tax law standpoint. And frankly, one of my favorite accounting influencers on Instagram, she's a tax attorney and a CPA. She's brilliant, but there's not that many of those people out there. And again, they're usually going to be focused on very high wealth individuals, high earning individuals, which maybe you would qualify for if you're listening to this. But tax attorneys are usually going to do less of the tax preparation and more of the advising, consulting, and just legal representation work. Now, you can also work with someone that has a PTIN. That's a Preparer Tax Identification Number. Now, this essentially says this person can file your taxes for you and sign the return, but it doesn't mean they can represent you. If there was an issue with the IRS, they can't call the IRS on your behalf. All they can do is kind of sign off on the return, like enter the data and just finish that off. And so a lot of accounting firms will have accountants with PTINs, but maybe aren't enrolled agents or aren't CPAs or tax attorneys, because usually the accounting firms can pay those people less because they haven't gone through the extra schooling to do it. But these people have probably spent many, many years filing tax returns under the guidance and supervision of enrolled agents and CPAs, but they are more doing the data entry work typically, and aren't going to be the people that can, again, represent you if something's going on with your tax return. You get a form in the mail, and you need someone to call the IRS on your behalf. So there are a lot of really, really experienced accountants out there with PTINs, but typically if you're going to work with an accountant directly, especially for a small firm or as a freelance accountant, you're probably going to want someone who's an enrolled agent, a CPA, or a tax attorney. Now, technically, you can have someone fill out all the paperwork and forms for you to file your taxes with no designation whatsoever, but I really, really, really do not recommend that. I don't care if they're a family member, a friend, your business partner. When you form a business, there are more forms to be filled out, and there's more things to get confused by, to misunderstand. And I think a lot of people misunderstand it. And this is a problem with taxes in general, just with how complicated it is. But a lot of people think, well, I'll just watch on YouTube and then I'll fill this out myself to save some money. But tax codes are always changing, and there is nuance around every single business. So that's why I say all the time, as soon as you start your business and it starts making money, you have to budget for an accountant. It doesn't have to be a super expensive accountant. If you want to work with a budget accountant, That's fine. I talk about that in another episode around what you should kind of expect when working with a cheaper accountant. But at least you have someone who knows what they're doing and can check the right boxes. Doesn't mean they're going to, do it properly, or they're not going to make mistakes, but they're probably going to make less mistakes than you're going to make. So I just can never say that enough. Don't do it yourself. Don't let someone who hasn't done a lot of tax returns. And frankly, if there's someone that did a lot of tax returns 20 years ago, that's not helpful. You really need someone who has a lot of experience from the last 3 to 5 years, because tax codes change, different administrations come in, change the laws around taxes, and that can have a massive impact on how well your accountant actually files your taxes. So don't trust this to someone that's done a few tax returns in the past. You need someone, if you want this to be done well and you want them to, or you want to reduce the likelihood of them making a massive mistake, hire someone who actually does taxes for a living every year, is going through many, many tax returns, and has the experience needed to do a really good job for your business. But again, we've talked about this before. Doesn't matter if it's a CPA, an enrolled agent, a tax attorney. If they're overloaded or overloading their team with taxes, like tax filings to do, because they don't charge enough, and so the way that they have to make their money is to do volume, to process as many tax returns as possible, mistakes are still going to come up. If the main accountant isn't good at running a business, doesn't embrace technology, doesn't embrace processes and systems and operational efficiency, you're going to have communication issues. There's likely going to be mistakes. Things are likely not going to be done on time. And your accountant is probably not going to be out ahead of things enough to really put together a smart tax plan and save you the most money on taxes as possible. That's why at Evolve Finance, we do all those things. We are trying to create an amazing experience for our clients so we can do the work properly, do it accurately, and also plan and be proactive so we can help our clients save as much money on taxes, not right at the end of the year, but throughout the summer, the fall, the winter, to make sure by the time tax season comes around, our clients are ready to save the maximum amount on taxes that we can get them and deliver a really great customer experience so our clients feel like they have a partner, because the accounting stuff can be scary. When you have someone on your side who's willing to explain things and walk you through things, it can make all the difference in the world and really reduce your stress as a business owner. So if you're curious about our tax and bookkeeping services, you can check us out at evolvefinance.com. But as always, thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.